Do you guys want to talk about the dropping dimes, or do you want to just talk about the ABA? What is the thing that you think they'd most want to hear you talking about?
Well, I think what dropping dimes has accomplished for us in the last 4 years, and like I said, about 14 years ago, I started trying to get my pension benefits, and a bunch of guys in the league, and they'd basically forgotten about us. They didn't do what they were supposed to do and fund, da-da-da-da. We went through about 4 or 5 years of legal problems back and forth. I got a few things done, and then Scott, who was a big Pacer fan, came on board and suggested that he and a guy named John Abrams, Dr. Abrams, and Ted Green put together a foundation called Dropping Dimes. And the reason the foundation was there is just help ABA guys, because there's a ton of very excellent ABA players that were pioneers of the game that are having a lot of financial problems. We didn't make the money they made now, see?
Well, let's just start at the beginning. What we're talking about is when the ABA merged with the NBA, there were a handful of players that had been promised a pension by the much larger NBA, but for whatever reason, it didn't happen. Is that pretty much, in a nutshell, what's going on?
Yeah, basically, when they merged, they got down to the end, and the 4 teams wanted to join the league, and the ABA Player Association said, okay, we'll agree to this, but we want the NBA, the teams, to fund the players that have played 3 years, the eligible ABA players that have played 3 years or more, fund us into the NBA pension program from the one we have now. And basically, when this merger happened, the pension plans were basically the same, but they wanted to fund us into the NBA plan, which would grow, with cost of living increases, et cetera. And they agreed to this. And then after a couple of years, I think to make a long story short, I think it got rather expensive. And in those days, there wasn't a whole lot of checking and finding out what was going on. We had no representation, and I think they just basically quit paying into the fund, and it just went away. And then 50 years later, we find out there's no pension, and there's not a whole lot you can do. We tried to do certain things, and again, it's a shame, because there's a whole lot of guys out there that were great players that didn't make a lot of money and barely making it now, and that the NBA pension sure would help. And so Scott, once he started his foundation, he began looking into this, exploring all the things, and talking to the NBA. And I guess Scott can tell you the NBA really didn't have any legal responsibility at all. But there's a guy named Bob Cricky who was the president of the ABA, and he had handled the old-timers pension when they gave them, and he was a good guy to talk to. And his basically thing was, he told me, he said, it's the right thing to do. And so Scott began negotiations with him and Adam Silver and da-da-da-da. And one thing led to another, and I've talked to some of the players, and one night we talked to a kid from Phoenix and Griswold and some people, and one thing led to another, and finally this summer they finally realized that the ABA guys did pioneer the game, and they are giving some of the guys some reparations for, not reparations, but they're calling it a recognition payment, but it's basically a pension. And the only thing sad is that 10 years ago there was a couple hundred guys eligible, and now there's maybe 100 and some. Yeah.
So, do me a favor. When you hit your hand, it's not making your mic rattle.
Sorry.
I want to I want to go kind of backwards a little bit. It can be said, and you have a book with Robin Miller.
Yes. That
talks about the significance of the ABA with respect to changing the game.
Correct.
And the book is called
We Changed the Game.
Okay, and you guys did change the game. There's an interesting story about when the merger was about to take place. One of the other owners from the NBA objected to, among other things, the three-point shot. Do you remember that conversation?
Oh, yeah. One guy, in the merger, Dick Tinkham was one of the writers, and he was in the merger committee. He was the head of it. And the one guy, I'm not sure who it was. It might have been the guy from Philadelphia or New York, one of the two, but stood up and said, well, there may or may not be a merger, But two things we'll never, ever have. We will never have that red, white, and blue ball, and there will never, ever be a three-point shot. Well, 1 out of 2 isn't bad.
Yeah, and I think it's certainly safe to say that the three-point shot changed the game.
Oh.
Absolutely.
Well, in the first year, the three-point shot was allowed in the NBA. There was like 900 three-pointers shot. And I think I read last year there was 45,000 three-pointers shot. So obviously it must have they kind of like it.
To step away from what we're talking about right now, I don't know if you saw this. There was an interesting article I read this morning that Grinnell College, did you see this? They did the game where they did nothing but three-point shots to set a record, and the final score was like 116 to something. Yes. What kind of a fun thing in the realm of the three-point shot. But to get back to the topic at hand, the amount of money needed to seed the pension fund is not a great deal of money when put in the context of the size and the financial status of the NBA. Is that correct to say, Scott?
Oh, yeah, that's correct. I mean, they announced that they were going to, the NBA, that is, along with the NBPA, announced last summer that they're going to do it now. Right. And the number is about $24.5 million, which is very, very small in relation to the business of the NBA.
Yeah. And how many players approximately are going to be eligible for this?
100 plus 10 families of guys who died during the 2 years that we were discussing this with the NBA.
Right. And is the NBA making it clear that this is happening now, so they at least get some of the good vibes get passed around, so people are aware that this is something that has been done?
Yes, they've sent out letters to the players. The players have received letters confirming what their amounts are, and they're actually cutting checks next week, as I understand it.
Oh, that's great. Now, Neto, can you tell me some of the players that you know that'll be benefiting from this?
Oh, gosh. I don't really like to mention names because a lot of these guys are pretty proud guys. And I'm not going to tell you that this guy used to be an all-star and now he's living on $500 a week. But there are guys out there that were living on $600-700 Social Security checks. I know one guy that was an all-star and living on about $700 a week and living in a one-bedroom apartment and can't even afford a car. And, you give a guy like this, even though I think he played 5 years, so he'll get, Scott, about 20,000 a year,
about
something
20,
like that.
25,000.
That's like $1,800 a month. That's going to be a life changer to these guys.
Sure.
And I think it's so great. There was one player that passed away. His name was Bert Averett. He was a little guard, and he played with me in Dallas, and he was a really good player. He had about 6-7 years in the league. Really tremendous player. He ended up, he had no money, and he was living, he got in a car accident, and he was paralyzed on his left side. He was living with his aunt, I believe, one of his relatives, in one of their houses they had. He had no money, and he couldn't afford an electric bill. This is so sad. So he would heat his house with kerosene. And one night it was really cold. He went out to get his can of kerosene and slipped on the ice and laid there for about 12 hours before somebody found him, and they had to amputate one of his toes and feet, and it was just a sad thing. But here's a guy that was a terrific player, and his pension would have been, a couple thousand a month, which would have been a life changer to him. And he deserved it. He was entitled to it. And unfortunately, he passed away. But there's a lot of stories like that. And, we can look back in the past. It's a shame that it didn't happen. But like I said, I'm so thrilled now that we finally did it. And I would say 98% of the credit should go to this guy sitting next to me, Mr. Scott Tarter.
Well, I'll congratulate you on some great work, Scott, and I'm sure a lot of people will be very grateful. Once again, we're talking about the Dropping Dimes Foundation. Where did you get the name?
That Dropping Dimes on the streets. I went to John Marshall High School here in Indianapolis, and I used to play basketball all the time, and if you drop a dime, that's giving an assist. So the thought was, we're going to be assisting these guys, we're going to drop dimes. Dropping dimes.
I see. And it's obviously significantly more than dimes. It's, would you say, $24 million to seed this thing?
$24 million.
And it'll be helping a bunch of aging guys. A significant number of these guys are African-American from the glory days of the ABA. Is there a place where the ABA is enshrined? Is there a proper place where they have
the Basketball Hall of Fame basically is for all of basketball. And I think the powers to be years back, were anti-ABA. And it stems from guys like Red Arabic and stuff who really did not like the ABA. But there are some great ABA players in the Hall of Fame.
Can I just jump in there for a second, though, and just say something? Neto just gave me a lot of credit, and I want to really quickly say that I think one of the reasons that this is such a cool story, honestly, is of the number of people who are responsible for making it happen. It's really true. From the Mel Daniels, our great Hall of Fame center from the Pacers, he's the guy that really initially drove this effort and said, we need to do something. Then we had, guys like Neto and Mel populating our advisory board once John Abrams and I got the charity going. Neto and Mel start calling Artis Gilmore and Julius Irving and Ice Gervin and George McGinnis and getting these guys onto our advisory committee, and that's why people started listening to us, because they wouldn't have given a rat's patoot about the three of us. But once these guys got on board and brought on the Hall of Famers, then we started getting an audience, and guys like Bob Costas and Peter Vesey joined the board, Miles Turner from the current Pacers, and those guys gave us a voice. And so it was a huge group effort.
Yeah, it does seem like such a simple issue in a way.
I'll tell you a funny story, and Mr. Scott won't admit it, but when we first started getting these guys like Spencer and all these guys, I'd say, okay, Scott, here's his number, give him a call. Oh, I can't call. He won't talk to me. I'm so scared. And I said, Scott, please. So I called Spencer. I said, he's going to call you. And so Scott calls him, and Spencer literally interrupts him halfway through and said, Scott, stop the talk. You got me. I'm in.
Oh, that's great.
But we had, and the funny part of it is, we were such. Julia sent me a little message over Thanksgiving or the month before, and we were talking about and he ended his message. We were talking about the pension, getting this stuff, and he and here's probably one of the greatest ever. And he ended the message by saying, "ABA brotherhood forever." And I think that is really cool, because these guys, we're like a fraternity, and we started something. We never got recognized for it, and now I think we are, and a lot of guys hopefully are going to benefit in a small amount. I mean, it's small compared to what they were promised, but at least it's something.
Bob, when you came into the world of professional basketball, what were your options?
Well, you got to remember back when I played, the NBA in 1966 had 8 teams. Nobody even thought about playing basketball in the pro. You never saw it on TV. Hell, bowling was more popular than the NBA back then. And there was no teams down south. There was very limited, I'm going to say this, very limited black players. And there was a lot of crap going on in the league. And all of a sudden, the ABA comes along, and there's so many talented players out there, but there was only so many spots on 8 teams. And all of a sudden, here we got 10 more teams, and then da-da-da-da. And then they started the underclass rule. And I agree with 100%. Spencer took it to the Supreme Court and said, look, I'm not going to finish 4 years of college. I need to support my family. Here's what I do good. Why can't I do it?
Sure.
And they agreed with him. And all of a sudden, they started the early picking these kids out of school, and of course the NBA they had a heart attack, or guys like Red Everybody had a heart attack. But we ended up, after 2 or 3 years, we had all the good players.
This actually reminds me of something that I think is just fascinating, and that is you started a tavern, if you will, a nightclub called Neto's. And I did a little bit of research and found out that this was effectively the first integrated nightclub of its kind in Indianapolis.
Yep.
And then that's a part and parcel of what the ABA was trying to do, and especially given the context of the time. What year did you start Neto's?
It was 1970. And modern-day people don't understand the 60s were. It was a lot of turmoil, and it was a lot of racial, I say, crap. And then, below the Mason down south, it was still pretty bad. And when we had our team, it wasn't like that. There was no color lines. There was nothing. We were all one people. And we opened the bar, and all the players came, and all the people in town came, and everybody got along. There was no fights. There was no problems. And I've talked to in the recent years, some of the black leaders from Indianapolis, and they kind of agree that the combination of the Pacers and my nightclub really helped bring the city together. And if my nightclub did anything, I'm glad it did that.
Yeah, and I think there's another argument to be made here, which was with respect to the city of Indianapolis, when with the Pacers, and then eventually they become the NBA Pacers, and then the next thing you know, down the road several years, you've got the Colts. and this whole city has been transformed.
And we had a Super Bowl, too.
Yeah, and we had a Super Bowl here, but, I mean, incredible facilities. We had amazing facilities that were growing over the years, from playing in the Coliseum to Market Square Arena to now a different facility downtown, the Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Then you had the Hoosier Dome and, of course, Lucas Oil Stadium. But just a lot of things that are elevating the visibility of the city and the quality of life, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, Scott and I were just down to Gainbridge. We were they're filming a documentary on Amazon, and it's just amazing. You look at this facility, and then I remember when we first started the Coliseum, Darnell and I were laughing that the restroom at the Gainbridge Fieldhouse is bigger than our locker room was at the old Fieldhouse. But it was a really nice place to play, and it was just so much fun. And you look back and you think, what would have happened if the Pacers weren't here? And that's where I could tell you a story that we start my book with. In 1969, Dick Tinkham told me this story, 30, 40 years after the fact. And I told him, I don't believe you're telling me this. And he said, yep. And that's when we decided we got to write a book. All these stories he started telling me, he said, because nobody knows the real stories. Everybody hears this. I heard that my Aunt Lily said to my brother that this and that happened. And that's not the way it was. At Game 7, 1969, we were playing the Kentucky Colonels, second year in the league. It's the seventh game. We were a 10-point underdog because they had a pretty good team. And little did we know that the owners of the team had meetings that morning with bankruptcy officials. And had we lost that seventh game, the next morning they were filing bankruptcy, folding the team. True story. And this comes from the president of the team. And we ended up winning that game and made it all the way to the championship series, which gave them enough money to get the next year going and the next year going. But there's a couple other stories like that with other teams that it's kind of wild how it was held together by seems like sticks and Band-Aids. And look what happened. Look what happened to the city. I mean, I think if the Pacers folded, you wouldn't see what you see now downtown. But and I'm not saying it was me or anything. I just say it was the team. The state loves basketball, and the way our team got along, we were visible. People could talk to us. They come to my bar and whatever, drink with us and party with us and have a good time. And that's, you don't see that a whole lot anymore, but it really, I think, helped the image of the team.
That kind of leads to my next question. Slick Leonard left us not too long ago. Obviously a tremendous personality and a great basketball figure. I know that you were super close to him. And your thoughts on the great Slick Leonard?
Oh, my gosh. Where do you start? I mean, he was one of a kind. I mean, he really was. When he first came to the team, the coach we had really didn't know what he was doing, and they hired Slick second year, and Slick put us all together. And I'm not going to use certain language he used because Slick used to use some very flowery words, but he got us all together and basically told us, here's the deal. He said, we're a family. There's no color lines on this team. We're all like brothers. If you don't want to be on this team, leave. And it's funny how that permeated throughout the years of the ABA. And even today, we're all friends. When I come to town, we all go up to a place called Dooley's, and we all sit around, Darnell, Billy Keller, all of us. And it's just like we're family. And that's the thing with Slick put in us. Now, there's a lot of times when Slick would come in the locker room after visiting a few of the local pubs before the game, and he would lay into us pretty good, but it worked. And we knew that what he was saying, it's amazing how you would literally, one guy, like Mel told me, he said, if Slick told me to run through a wall, I'd do it. And then ask him why out later. but Slick was he was an unusual character. He was one of a kind. I think that's why he's in the Hall of Fame, and I really miss him. It's he called me. We talked to each other the night before he passed away, and it's just I'll never forget what we were talking about. But he was one of a kind. I don't think you'll see too many like him anymore.
And you were buddies with Robin Miller.
Very good friends. Robin was a Cub reporter on our team when he was like 18, and he'd travel with us, and we kind of brought him into the fold. I don't think he was so green. He made grass look brown. He was just a kid, and he tells the stories of he saw the poker games and the bars and the girls and everything. And I know he just sat there with big eyes, but he had a blast. And then he became that great ESPN reporter, and he went to, I forget, what was it, the other thing he worked with, racing, racing magazine and stuff. But Robin was, again, there's another one of a kind guy, and I'm just so sad that what happened to him, because he had the back cancer and he was doing very well, and then all of a sudden he contracted, I think it was leukemia, and that's what got him. But to the end, he was Robin Miller. That's all you can say.
Yeah, and once again, your book, We Changed the Game, available on Amazon, and
go to droppingdimes.org, and it's on there. WeChangeTheGame.com. It'll be a great Christmas present, and like I said, we give part of it to Dropping Dimes, and it's a great charity. And I think Scott will. There's a couple other things that I think Scott will that are really cool. We're going to talk about in a few minutes. And also those T-shirts that you guys have been making.
Yeah, we put together some T-shirts that say Nettos and some hats that are available on the Bob and Tom website. We're giving all the money, obviously, to the Dropping Dimes Foundation. If you're wearing one of these T-shirts, that's so obscure and so weird. And I know you sent me a picture of one of your buddies in Scotland wearing one.
Yeah.
It has to, and people went, "What's Nettos?" That's awesome. Much cooler than wearing whatever, an Adidas or something. Everybody knows that. If you're wearing a Nettos T-shirt, well, it's an obscure nightclub, and then we intend to bring back Nettos for one night. We had the whole thing planned. We had a date. All these people were going to come, and then, of course, COVID hit. That was the first thing we had to cancel. I was so upset. We even have the posters. They were done and ready to go, and then it was over. So sometime,
hopefully next spring we can do it, because
in the spring of 23.
I think so many people would come, and they would, donate to Dropping Dimes, and all the Pacer guys would come. I know Bob Costas, he was going to show up, and it's just amazing when you say ABA, these guys, all of a sudden their eyes light up. And Scott and I were just speaking with Bob. I just called him on the phone driving up here, and he's going to do a little, advertisement for Scott's ball, basketball, the ABA ball, which Scott has the rights to now. It's fabulous ball.
Let me break in and say, you can. I forgot to mention that you can purchase an ABA ball with the official logo and everything. And is that also at Dropping Dimes?
No, that is a separate organization. That's Lana Sports. It's named after my mom, actually.
Okay.
But
how do you spell it?
LANA Sports.
LanaSports.com.
And if you go there, you can do, for the next week anyway, if people put in a promo code HOLIDAY, they can get 15% off and free shipping. And if they order before December 15th, it'll arrive before Christmas. But it is the exact replica of the ABA basketball, just like Netto and all the Indian Pacer.
What was the origin of that?
George Mikan. George Mikan wanted something different. He wanted to really market the ABA as a different product and much more entertaining. And then ultimately it became the symbol of street ball. The Rucker Park, Julius Erving, that was all about the red, white, and blue basketball.
A great story is when Mike Storin did a little experiment. The year after they had the ball, they went to a playground or somewhere it was, and they had 50 kids lined up. They were like, 13, 14, 15-year-old kids playing basketball. They had a table set up, and when the games were over, they had like 50 kids, and they had the kids. Here's the deal. You could either have a brand new NBA, brand new brown ball, or you could have a red, white, and blue ABA ball to take home. Which would you rather have? Well, guess how many out of 50 took the red, white, blue ball?
I'm guessing 50-ish.
You're right, 50, every single one of them. Yeah.
But I also want to make the point that all the proceeds from the sale of those balls, even though it's a separate organization, it exists so that it can raise awareness of the ABA and include ABA players in merchandising opportunities, which it does, and then all profits go to the Dropping Dimes Foundation.
Oh, great. Well, that's super cool. And I know there are so many ABA fans, and I think that'll be a terrific gift. I'll make a point of mentioning that again on the air tomorrow.
I'll tell you, I played that. I played that advertisement that Bob Costas made for your shirts and hats, T-shirts and hats, and I put it on the internet and on all these ABA websites. It's getting, a lot of attention, as Scott's ball is, and it's Christmas. That's what could be a better gift than a red, white, blue ball? Think about it.
Well, congratulations on the success of your campaign to help some of these gents in the world world of needing some cash and some pensions. And as you say, the current NBA is obviously a league that's extraordinarily successful. And it's amazing to think that back in the 60s, there was essentially no television coverage. And so these guys, as they say, are sort of standing on your shoulders. You were the guy, and you're already, what, 6'8"? So
Yeah,
getting up there.
I'll tell you, the thing of it is, and I've talked to Scott about it, and a lot of player friends of mine have says, you know, the little money they're giving us is great. Oh, it's nice, especially these guys. But as much is the recognition they're giving us as pioneers. They're finally recognizing, hey, you know, we changed the game, like my book says. And for the NBA to do this, they are recognizing the pioneering work the ABA did. Because if you look at Walt Frazier, who's a great player for the Knicks, he made a comment a few years ago, I wrote it in my book. He said, today's NBA is the ABA. And if you think about it, the run and gun, the showtime at halftime. See, back in the NBA, I went to an NBA game when I was in college in New York, and at halftime, everybody fell asleep. The only thing that was out there was somebody washing the floor. I mean, there was no entertainment value.
You know, I had a friend of mine ask me about that, and he said, is that really, really true? And I said, why don't you reverse everything? Like, take the NBA as it exists today and start taking away the things that the ABA brought to it. So take away the three-point shot, no more of those. Take away the fast up-tempo style of play, so it has to be a very slower half-court offense. Take away the slam dunk competition. Take away early entry from college into the pros. And all of a sudden, the entire NBA changes.
Well, you take away the cheerleaders.
Take away the cheerleaders, of course.
Also, make them wear the clothes you guys wore. the short shorts.
Yeah.
Now, Neto, do you have any of your old uniforms?
You know, it's funny. About 20 years ago, we had a 30-year reunion, and I think I had a couple. I found a couple left, and I took them to an auction. I wish I wouldn't have sold them because they brought about $2 or $3 grand a piece. Now they're worth, Scott can tell you, he's a collector, a lot more money. But the funny story was I had a All-Star jersey from the second All-Star game. It was the cheapest piece of junk you've ever seen. We played in Kentucky. They probably paid $5 for the jersey. It was just a green jersey, said East on it. It had shrunk up, probably wouldn't even fit Spencer. And I used to wipe my car off with. And I talked to a friend out in Philly, a guy out in Philly, what was the name of the host? They have an auction company.
SCP or
some auction company, the sports auction, they have it. So I told him about it. He said, well, send it out here. I'll clean it up and we'll see what we can get for it. And I said, God, if you get me $200 or $300, that'd be great. And then next morning I wake up after the auction period, and they have a little pause where people can bid if they've already bid. And I looked up, my God, $800. I was about ready to pass out. That's the greatest thing I ever saw. And then I started getting all these emails, 800, 1,000, 1,200, 1,500, 2,000, brought $6,500, and I used it to wash my car with.
and I would have given him 7.
Wow, that's great. So
and this is 10 years ago.
Do you have anything?
What do I have? Do I have anything?
Yeah, but I'm not going to say it on air because I want you to give it to me. No, you know what he has that's so cool that he should give it to his kids. In addition to his championship ring, that's number one. But he's also got an ABA letter from the very first year of the league notifying him that he was selected as one of the first ABA All-Stars. It's amazing. It's in perfect condition.
Well, that's great.
Yeah,
I've got some stuff. You know, I've got some pictures. You know, I can't remember. I've got a box of stuff. I haven't really looked at it. He always bugs me. He wants to buy all my stuff. He bought my shoes. I had a pair of shoes. Great story. When we played our first championship in L.A., you know, nowadays these kids are getting $5 million or $20 million a year to wear basketball shoes. We were in the finals in L.A., and the Lakers were out of it. They weren't playing, and we were playing the L.A. Stars. And the head guy from Adidas, I think his name is Ernie Severin or something like that, he came from us, and he says, we're going to come out with this new revolutionary kangaroo leather shoe, Adidas. You know, remember we all wore Chuck Taylors.
Sure.
Chuck Taylors. And he says, if you guys will wear these in the finals, they're $170 shoes. And back then, you know, Chuck Taylor was $12. We'll give you each 2 pair. And we could, oh my God. So that was our first shoe deal. And to make a long story short, we wore them, and I had one pair I never wore. And my old buddy here bought them from me a while back. So,
but You just reminded me of something else, though, like the style that you see when the NBA players show up at the stadiums now and they get out and make a grand entrance with their custom, fashionable clothes on. That all came from the ABA.
Yeah.
I mean, the NBA, you weren't allowed to do that. You had to wear a set suit. You had to wear a navy blue or a gray suit, and everybody had to look alike.
Yeah, even on
and
the planes, you had to wear a suit.
no tats, short hair. And the ABA just said, if you can play, we want you to be yourself.
Well, in the NBA back then too, they had a rule that you could you couldn't have sideburns or anything like that. You couldn't do anything like that.
Yeah, I remember running into in the city of New York. I ran into Walt Frazier in a mink coat with sideburns,
Oh yeah,
the size of a steak, and of course, that was the era of the afro.
oh yeah.
And I mean, now there's all kinds of different hairstyles for all kinds of people, but that was huge.
Yeah.
Back in the day, if you watch some of the films. Is the NBA going to, at some point, do a big ABA tribute? Do you think maybe?
I doubt it.
I doubt it. I think maybe sometime down the road, but there's a lot of the old guard in the NBA were very, very, very anti-ABA, and I think the new guys like Cricky and some of these new guys, Adam Silver, they're pretty good people, but I think they don't want to rock the boat either sometimes.
Well, we are trying. There's a local eye surgeon, my partner at Dropping Dimes, John Abrams, and I, who've been talking about we don't buy and sell stuff. We acquire stuff because we're hoping to put together a virtual museum or a virtual exhibition space for the ABA. And I think that's really important because of the role that league played in today's professional basketball, that it be recognized as such, so.
Yeah.
Now, Neto, do you still shoot hoops? I mean, you've got a couple of fake knees, right?
I got one fake
okay.
knee, and it took me an hour to get through security. I went through the wrong security thing. I think this guy had never seen an artificial knee before. He patted down everything but my knee, and he was smiling. That's what scared me.
Do you ever go on the basketball court anymore and shoot?
Down in Austin, there's a guy named Chris Corbett who has a thing called Austin Youth Basketball, and it's huge. I mean, they start after the regular season and goes into the spring, into June, and they have 100 teams. And he has, I think 5, 6, 7 teams. And my grandson started playing about 2 years ago, so they wanted me to be an assistant. So I've been an assistant coach, and I work with the kids in that league, and it's been a lot of fun. And again, I haven't shot around too much since I had my knee fixed, but I tried to help them with underneath the posting and just help the kids, and it's really fun to see these kids that we had 4 years ago, see the progress they're making. And like my grandson now, he's in a sophomore in high school, and he was 5'10" about a year and a half ago, and now he's 6'6", so something's going on.
Wow.
And he made the junior varsity team, and he's kind of like me. He's growing uncoordinated, but the old saying, like Slick said, you can't buy height.
Yeah. How tall are you?
I'm 6'9".
6'9".
Yeah, 6'9".
Still?
Yeah.
Well, you're a man of a certain age. We all kind of shrink.
Yeah. If I'm in a bar too long, I walk out about 6'6". So
Well, we hope to bring back Nettos and do Nettos night sometime in the spring of
That'd be a lot of fun.
in the spring of 2023. Anything else you want to cover?
Yeah, Tom, if you don't mind, one of the things Neto was being pretty humble about, but I mean, we did just come from Cambridge, where Neto and Darnell Hillman and George McGinnis and Don Boozy and Billy Keller were all on hand, along with Miles Turner of the current Pacers, with the crew from Amazon Prime Sports that's doing a 4-part series on the ABA that's going to be really cool. And I've been fortunate enough to be involved in the background on that. And sometime this summer, around the NBA Finals, there should be a very cool 4-part series coming out about the ABA. And our Indiana Pacers are going to be the focus, as they should, as the team of the ABA.
Well, that's great.
Yeah,
that'll be super cool.
And the funny part is, I was talking to the producer today, and I got him aside, and I said, I told him a couple stories. I really can't tell those on TV. And he looked at me and said, "Hey, this is Amazon. Well, I want you to tell them nobody's going to be fed." And I said, "Okay," because if I start telling the slick stories, it might get a little saucy.
They even found out, if I can put in one more plug for the cause, the executive producers found out about the Atlanta Sports Basketball, and they made it the official basketball of the series because of the connection to Dropping Dimes and the proceeds going to Dropping Dimes. So,
okay, here's a question from an idiot. I'll ask it. Was it in the beginning? Is there any more like a visual issue? Is it better, worse, no difference at all to use the colorful basketball when you were first starting? Was it a distraction, or does it matter at all?
You know, when I first started to use it, the difference to me lasted about 10 minutes. And then I started shooting it. It was just like any other ball, except you could see it better.
That's what I thought.
You could watch the rotation. When it hits the bankboard, you can see it kind of spin which way it's going to go. And my coach, the guy that owns a thing down in Austin Sports, Scott has given them a few balls, and all the kids, he uses them to teach the kids rotation and free throws. He uses them and he uses them all the time. And it's funny how the kids, they fight each other to who's going to be able to shoot with the red, white, blue ball when they're practicing. So it's popular. And I'll tell you what, if you see this ball, I don't know if you've got one or they give you one, but it is the real deal. It's not some cheapy ball. And
yeah, it's a composite leather. It's the same thing as the Wilson indoor-outdoor NBA ball.
Wow, it's great.
It's a good ball.
And if you look at it, it's exact replica of the real deal. And the NBA, believe it or not, up till about a year, has been trying for 20 years to prevent people from doing that. And there's another ABA league out there, which is a joke, but they have some little ABA ball, which I wouldn't give you $2 for. But this is the real deal.
So you actually acquired the legal rights, obviously, being an attorney.
Yeah, that was helpful.
Did you also acquire the logo?
Yeah. The logo, the league logo to the American Basketball Association, and then the Players Association logos, the ABA Players Association, because this is a group effort involving the ABA players, and then the exact replica of the official American Basketball Association. And recently, George Mikan's family signed with Atlanta Sports, and we're going to be coming out in a few months with the original ABA basketball signed with the facsimile signature of George Mikan, which will be really cool. Right now, it's got Slick Pinkham, which is.
Have you ever heard the story about Slick Pinkham?
No.
Well, this is a great story. That's why they put it on there. Back in towards the end of the ABA, they had a 17-round draft.
1971.
Yeah, 1971. And Slick and Dick Tinkham were in the room, and everybody else is left. And they're trying to pick players, and there's no players left after 19 rounds. So the 18th round, they say, let's just make up a player. So they named him Slick Pinkham after Dick and Slick. It's from DePaul University. And anyway, it shows up, and if you go back and check the drafts, it'll show. They took Slick Pinkham from DePaul University. It's in the archives. It was just a running joke with the Pacers. That's why they put it on there.
The only fictitious person actually chosen in a professional basketball draft officially.
Oh, that's classic. That is great. That's a great story.
And I'll tell you something. You get these balls right now. Once they quit putting Slick Pinkham on them, they're going to become even more of a collector's item. So
where on the internet is the most information available about the ABA?
I would say that is a good friend of ours named Arthur Hundhausen runs a website called remembertheaba.com.
Right.
And that has the most basic, great, fun information about the ABA.
He's from Colorado. He's got everything.
And eventually the idea is to take all of the stuff that you've acquired and photograph it and catalog it and put it on the internet somewhere where anyone can peruse it and find out all the cool stuff that happened over the years. And are you going to be able to access the videos of this extant for old games and stuff?
Yes, Arthur and I have a huge amount of that video footage, and we'd like to make that available as well. We don't want to squirrel it away and be one of those crazy, weird people with stuff in their basement.
Could you get like one of Neto's greatest moments and then maybe say it's 30 seconds and then we could put it on repeat?
Yeah.
So when we do Neto's night, we'd have it on the big screen just playing constantly all
We
night.
could do that. Hey, you know what would be cool is I've got some original radio calls, and a lot of them involve Neto, of course.
That'd be super cool.
Okay. I mean, where the crowd's going nuts, and at one point Neto hits a last-second free throw to win a game, and the crowd's going crazy.
Yeah, I know there's some bar, I think, in Alabama that has Barry Krause's famous stop, and I guess it just plays constantly.
He's living in Chattanooga now.
Really now?
There he is, yeah.
Cool.
I see him. I'm on Facebook with
Well,
him.
yours would be your block of, was it Rick Barry you blocked that got Red McComb so happy? Or who?
No, George. That was George.
Oh, George McGinnis. Oh, maybe we don't want to talk about that.
I don't think we could say Red McComb, but was a guy. He owned the Spurs. He owned the Minnesota Vikings and
the San Antonio Spurs.
And he's back. He's 94 now. He's a zillionaire. He owns Circuit of America's racetrack, where the which is. But he I don't know if I could tell that on the air what he said, but we played the Pacers, and I was with San Antonio, and about 2 months later I came back to the Pacers. But we played the Pacers, and they were Pacers and just won, and we beat them like 90-60 or something. We beat the dog. But I remember George came around to pick one time, and I was waiting for him. I knew he was going to do it. He went up with that one-handed shot, and I blocked it into the stands. And Red comes bursting into the locker room, and
Can we just say he was?
said, Neto.
Can we before you say anything? Can we just say that
an orgasm.
Or after you say something?
I'll tell you a great story. I got to tell him this the documentary. We're in Dallas, and we're playing an exhibition game in, I think it was Oklahoma. Where's Oral Roberts University?
I think it is Tulsa.
Tulsa. Is it Oral Roberts
Right,
University?
sure.
Okay. We go into play, and I wasn't supposed to play that night because I had terrible tendonitis in my hand. Well, about 3 or 4 days before, I'd had some shots of cortisone, and I was feeling really good. And it said I wasn't listed to play, but I played that night. And before the game starts, here comes Oral in the locker room with his entourage, and he's shaking everybody's hand, okay? So he shook all our hands. It was great. Then we go out in the game, and he's sitting in a chair, looked like right in the middle of the arena, watching the game, and we won. And I had a good game. I had like 25 points. So the reporter comes in, and they're saying, I was sitting there, and they said, Neto, you weren't even supposed to play tonight. Where'd you get 25 points? I said, well, man, I shook Oral's hand, and it just got better. Well, here's the rub. The next day in the paper, I got it somewhere, Oral's touch helps Pacer Center, something like that.
Divine intervention.
Oh, my God. But it gets better. The Spurs, the next year, we had another game with them, okay? And for the game, here he comes straight to me, shakes my hand like this. He shakes my hand and says, how's that wrist doing?
He believes his own publicity.
He said, hey, Brian, that's the first one I really did,
Oh, that's classic.
You can't say that, but there's just so many crazy stories fun stories that happened out there, and I could tell you slick stories for weeks.
How many guys back in the day smoked cigarettes?
Most of them.
Yeah, I was going to say, because it was a different time.
Well, I could put it this way, that you walk into the locker room at halftime and you would see Slick, Darnell, Roger, who else? A couple other guys. Just
Mel? Did Mel smoke?
Puffing away. No, Mel didn't.
That's just so unimaginable.
But, really, if you're in super shape like we were in, it didn't bother. Cigarettes, they smoke like, and Slick smoked like a smokestack, but they all did. And
How many would the guys after a game that was in Indy, would they go to Neto's? Would pretty much everybody show up? Would Slick be there?
Yeah, they would. Well, if we lost, Slick usually wouldn't show up. But if usually, yeah, everybody would come over, and the visiting team would come over, and it was just that's what made it so cool. Because in those days, the visiting team had to wait till the next day to fly out commercial. And nowadays, they have their private plane; they just go jump on it. So they would literally, a lot of the visiting team would come in the night before. They come in the bar, they play the game, come in that night. And, so all the players come in, the fans are going to come in, and the girls are going to show up.
So now I've heard that sometimes you intentionally invited the opposing players the night before the game.
Oh, absolutely.
And we're very free with your discounts on the liquor.
We gave them big discounts. and the referees drank for free. And that is a true. There's some other stories I could tell you about referees that I'll tell you online. What the heck? We had one very famous referee, and night before the game, he told me he was sitting around. And he said, "You don't know any girls here in town?" I said, "Yeah, I do, a few." And I called one up, this girl I know, and she came out, and away they went. And next day, I went and got the ball. The first time I went in for a layup, there wasn't anybody within 10 feet of me. He called a foul on somebody. And the guy said, "Me? I wasn't even near him." And I went to the free throw line. He walked up, slapped the ball on my stomach, looked at me, and whispered. He says, "Best time I ever had." So
time.
basically, all night long, I could hit people, knock them down. He'd never call a foul on me.
Good to know.
Yeah,
well,
good to know.
Gentlemen, it's been a great pleasure. And I want to do one more time. I want to get the exact place to get the ABA ball. Is Lana Sports, is it just LANA Sports, one long word?
That's right. LANAsports.com.
And that's it. Okay. And then you can, it's all pointed, it's all laid out right there.
Before this Christmas.
Oh, yeah. If people order by December 15th, they'll get the ball before Christmas. And if they use the promo code, which we're doing just for your show, it's holiday. And if they use that holiday code, then they'll get 15% off plus free shipping.
Well, congratulations on the success of your program with respect to helping out the great players. And obviously, more money would be helpful for dropping dimes at any point.
Yes, and the money from the NBA doesn't cover everybody. It only covers the guys who played 3 years in the league. So there are still about 150 living players who don't qualify for that money.
Okay, so whatever you can do would be great. Well, thank you so much. I certainly appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Best of luck.
Thank you.